Hi, this is Jena Bengtson with Fuego. Many of you may know Fuego from some nice videos that Will put out with him a couple of years ago, especially a very popular one on training the young horse. And I've had him for just over a year now, and Fuego is now 8 years old. And I'm starting out today with a short session of work in hand. We're starting out on a large circle and just working on keeping him stretched into the contact and stepping forward and under his inside hind leg. And for not being warmed up, he's starting out pretty good, stretching down and out to the contact, although I would like to see him a little bit more active, but it just takes a little while for him to get going. And now we're just doing a leg yield from the quarter line over to the fence line, and he definitely lost some impulsion there, so I'll have to get him a little more motivated. I'm pretty new to doing work in hand. In fact, I just finally started trying to teach it to myself when I found out I needed to do it for this video, so I'm still learning my coordination, holding the whip and the rein in my outside hand, although this direction is definitely easier for me as I'm right-handed. I have a little more trouble going the other direction when I have to coordinate the whip in my left hand. And here we have another leg yield, and this one was nicer. He kept his tempo a little bit better and didn't slow down like in our first attempt. And I'm still happy that he's reaching down and out to the contact. He tends sometimes to want to curl on the neck a little, but he's been really good here about reaching out, which I'm happy to see. And again, we could probably just have a little more forwardness in the walk. This is the first time I've seen myself doing work in hand, and it's funny how it felt like we were walking a lot more forward than what it looks like in this video, and that was a little bit of shoulder 4 I just did back there. And I'm trying to keep this work in hand fairly short because I plan on also lunging and riding him in this session, and so I don't want to overdo it. I'm going to stop and change direction, and I just gave him a carrot for a treat. I always make sure he keeps his head turned away from me when I give him a treat, because when I got him, he was really pushy with food and kind of grabby and all over you, so I make sure I never give him any food unless he turns his face away from me, and he's got the idea of that really well now. And he started out in a really nice stretch again. He looks pretty relaxed. And just right there, we've got a little bit more forwardness going, which is nice. I look very forward. I look much more forward than him. He's trying to keep his attention coming around here. He kind of wants to look out the front of the arena. My friend is recording us, so he kind of wants to look at her and see what she's doing. We're starting out on a big circle this direction, and looks like we lost just a little bit of our forwardness here, and I'm actually getting a little too far out in front of him. I've seen myself do that a couple times in this video, so I'll have to watch that. I need to work more on driving him forward from behind. And this direction, it's a little harder for me to use my whip. Sometimes I don't actually make contact with him when I try to give him a little tap, just because I don't have the coordination yet, but I'm working on it, and I am getting more comfortable with it over time. I'm fortunate that Fuego already knows how to do work in hand from when he was in training with Will, so he's a good horse to learn on. He already kind of knows what he's doing. It's just me who's figuring out what to do. And I'm happy that his tail's gently swinging and he looks relaxed through the back. He's got his floppy ears going, which is always a sign with him that he's relaxed and working nicely. I believe we're going to start a leg yield here, and it's crossing over nicely. I did get a bit of a head tilt with him here. I think I'm using a little too much outside rein trying to keep him straight, and I caused his head to tilt to the outside. Other than that, it wasn't too bad. And just keeping him focused, coming around the front of the arena, as well as my friend videotaping. There's also a lot of activity going on outside of the front of the arena, so off and on during our work today, he kind of wants to check it out, but not really a big deal. And a little bit of shoulder 4 here. I don't have a lot of angle, but he is stepping underneath himself just a little bit more. And it looks like we could have lost a little bit of our forwardness through that. And that will conclude our work in hand session, and we'll move on to lunging next. Again, giving him a treat and making sure his head's turned away for it. And Fuego usually does better starting out to the left, both in lunging and riding. So I'm going to start out his lunge work to the left there. He thought we were going to move and right into... Starting out with a pretty nice walk, just going into a pretty good stretch right away. And looking relaxed and fairly forward. I know he could march out a little bit more when he's having a good day, but this isn't too bad. I walk with him a little bit while I lunge because I have a shorter lunge whip, so if I do need to give him a little tap with it, I like to be close enough that I can reach him. And also I have a lightweight lunge line, so it helps me to keep a better feel of his mouth, where if I get too far away from him, it's harder to keep the more consistent contact that I like. There's a pretty decent transition up to the trot for not being warmed up at it yet, and for not being warmed up, his trot's pretty good considering he's just starting out. I like that he's staying pretty consistently stretching and reaching down, although off and on you'll see he kind of gapes his mouth open, and that's where he's trying to turn his head to the outside, but he kind of hits the line, so you'll see his mouth kind of pop open off and on when he does that, like right there. And overall he's staying pretty focused, considering things going on outside the arena, outside of camera range. He can be a little ADD sometimes, where he just kind of likes to look around and see what's going on all the time. He's not a spooky horse or particularly nervous. He just likes to look around and watch things. He's curious. To transition into canter, and he kind of came up a little, but his canter transitions can be a little hard for him, so that wasn't too bad. And I'm just sending him forward here. If I can get him more forward, and yeah, you can see there I got him with the whip a little, and he kind of swished his tail out, but it had the desired effect, and he did come forward a bit more and started reaching down a little bit better. His first canter of the day is always a little rough for him, so overall I'm pretty happy with that. He does better at the canter the more warmed up he is. And his trot looks a little bit better now, even just from that short canter session. He seems to have just a little bit more lift off the ground. And bring him back down to walk. I always try to walk after his trot session so he doesn't just slam on the brakes and go directly from trot to halt.
No.
And I'm keeping my lunging session short, just like the work in hand, since I'm doing riding as well today, so I don't want things to run too long or for him to get too fatigued. It's a pretty warm day out. It's around 90 degrees, and he's got his winter coat now, so he's actually being a pretty good trooper working out in the heat, being hairy. And pretty happy with his walk there. Normally when I lunge him I would walk longer than this, but since I did the work in hand first and warmed him up a little bit doing that, I'm keeping the walking kind of short before we go into our trot work. And that was a pretty nice transition into the trot. See, he kept his head down and actually came up over his back a little as he pushed off into the trot, which was nice. And he's looking pretty relaxed. Just encourage him to stay out on the line and keep coming forward and underneath himself with that inside hind leg. This direction I'm having to work a little bit harder keeping him out. He was trying to cut in a little bit on me going this way today. And generally, he doesn't warm up as quickly going to the right. That's why I started out going to the left. If I start out going to the right, it takes a lot longer for him to warm up. And you can see off and on he's kind of getting a little bit behind the vertical and tending to curl a little bit. So when he does that, I just keep on working on sending him forward and really trying to get his inside hind leg underneath himself to help fix that. And he is a little bit more willing to stretch in the canter now, since this is a little further into his warm-up now. Let him go back to the trot. His canter wasn't too bad, and I'm trying not to tire him out too much, so just doing a little warm-up before a riding session. As you can see, he's pretty relaxed and holding his tail pretty quiet and has a nice floppy ears that I like to see with him. And you can see him turning his head away for his treat. And you can see as he starts out, he's a little bit curled in the neck. So I'm going to want to try to get him reaching out to the bridle a little bit more. I usually let him get going straight right at first before we start our first circle, just to get his momentum going. Sometimes if you go immediately onto a circle, he can fight it a little, being a little bit more sluggish and behind the legs. So just trying to get a nice forward marching walk going before we start any circle work. And now we're going to try a large circle. Again, I would ideally like to see him reaching out more like you saw with the work in hand. And I notice I'm kind of overriding him a little bit here. I'm trying to encourage him to come forward into my hands so I can get a better stretch down and out, but I'm just being overall a little bit too busy, which I think is actually annoying him and not being productive at all. We did a slight leg yield over to the fence line, trying to get that inside hind leg stepping forward and underneath. There, he looks a little more relaxed. I'm going to try another leg yield here. And his head's turned a little too far to the inside, going on the left rein. That's something I need to watch. He does tend to want to overbend in the neck on the left rein, so I have to keep conscious of keeping him a little straighter. There, he's reaching out a little bit better there for a few seconds, which was nice. Oh, well, we had to stop to go to the bathroom. Fuego sometimes has trouble walking or moving and pooping at the same time, so I let him stop to go. And just trying to get the relaxation back and getting him into a better stretch again. And working on trying to keep the contact with him. If you let him get a loose rein, he'll tend to curl more, so I try to keep the connection with the rein to encourage him to take it and reach out with it. And again, I notice I'm just being way too busy with him in my riding today. I think partly because I was nervous about being recorded and doing this voiceover, so I just micromanaging him a little too much, where I should have just stayed a little bit more quiet and more relaxed and just worked on getting him to reach out to the contact more on his own instead of fussing with him so much. And got a little bit of a head twist there, leg yielding to the left. On the left rein, he tends to overbend to the inside, and on the right rein, I have to watch. A lot of times he likes to twist his nose to the outside. When I first got him, he did it almost constantly, and he has gotten a lot better, but it's something that you'll see still crops up in his work. He's crossing over pretty nice with that leg yield. Again, his nose is tilting just a little bit to the left as we leg yield to the left, which I would like to see his head staying a little straighter. His walk looks like it's getting a little freer though, which is good. And then coming across the diagonal, it's trying to keep a nice marching walk going, and again, just trying to get him to reach down and out. He's still tending to want to be a little bit curled a lot of the time. And yeah, I just have a feeling that I was being nervous. I think he was picking up on that and not working as nicely today, unfortunately. And into a working frame now. And a little bit of shoulder in. Again, this direction he really does tend to want to overflex in his neck, overbend in his neck, so I'm just working on keeping his head in the center of his chest as much as I can. I'm trying to get him a little lower again, stretch lower, and there he starts to stretch down to the contact better. And again, still just a little curled in the neck there. I was having a lot of trouble with that today. And lay gild on the right rein. And it's easier this direction to keep his neck from over bending. Again, this way I have to watch more that he doesn't get the head tilt and try to twist his nose to the outside. I shaved his mane off because he rubbed out a big section of it and it looked really funny. So with that, it's really easy to see the weaknesses in his neck and when he's not using himself correctly. And there was a little attempt at a bit of half pass. We just started trying to work on half pass a couple of weeks ago, so it's pretty new to him. So we're just kind of playing with it and trying not to make a big deal out of it. Just mainly trying to keep him relaxed about it and not losing his tempo more than having a perfect bend or perfect angle. And a little bit of half pass to the left, and this direction's a little easier for him since he does tend to bend better to the left anyway. Far from perfect, but I do like that he stayed pretty relaxed about it. And there he's trying to look at something outside the arena. I'm getting focused back on me, and we're going to go ahead and start our trot work. Right there, and he's got his nose out. That's really nice. And I like to go just around the outside of the arena before doing any circles, just to help him get going. Sometimes he gets a little reluctant if you start right out on a circle. So just working on getting that stretch a little more consistent. I'm going to go ahead and change rein here. Oh, and here he stopped and he thinks he has to poop, but it's not happening, so I have him move on. You're going to see he's going to stop there a couple more times in this session, and I think it's because he already went to the bathroom there earlier, and so every time we pass that spot, he thinks he wants to go again. And he will eventually go, but we have a couple of false alarms before that happens. I found if he stops and kind of thinks he has to poop, if you just let him stand there, he won't ever go. He'll end up standing there for several minutes and nothing will happen. So if he stops and something doesn't happen fairly quickly, I just move him on again, and he'll eventually go when he's ready. He's just a little tension there. You can see he's kind of lashing his tail around a little, and you can just see a little more tension through his body. And work on getting some relaxation back. And there he's working a little bit better. And across the diagonal again. Just trying to keep him moving forward, trying to get him to reach out and down to that contact. Encouraging him with my inside leg to keep stepping over and underneath himself to get a better stretch. And now we're finally going to try a circle. It's warmed up enough now. And so as we changed rein there and moved to the right rein, he did kind of pop his head up, which is a sign he's not really working optimally yet. When he's really relaxed and coming through, you'll see he can do that figure eight change of direction without coming up above the bridle like that. Change of rein. That time he kept the connection a little bit better. But he's still not looking quite warmed up and consistent yet. There's a bit of a leg yield coming out of that circle. And I could definitely tell I'm being a bit irritating to him in this trial, and there he's decided he wanted to stop to try to poop again in that same area of the arena. Every time we pass his other pile, he starts getting the idea that he needs to go again, and that was another false alarm. So we're gonna move back into our work. I had a lot of trouble with him with that when I first got him, trying to stop and go a lot, and he doesn't do it too much anymore, but today wasn't one of our better rides. And he's going to stop and try to go again. Another false alarm. I know he has to go, but again, from past experience, if you just let him stand there, he will just stand there forever and nothing will happen. So and pushed him forward a little bit across the diagonal there. There's a bit of a better stretch down, but I still would like him to be stretched down and out more. And that leg yield didn't look too bad. I'm working off a small screen, so the video is pretty tiny while I'm doing this voiceover, so when I'm at the far end of the arena, I can't see quite as much detail as I'd like to. Looking a little tense here. And I know a lot of it is just from me overriding him, being too busy, both with my hands and legs. I'm going to try a little sitting trot in the stretch. I usually like to start sitting the trot while he's in a stretch. To help both of us warm up to it. And then bringing him up to a working frame. And I should have let him go back down again. I don't think he was quite ready to come up to the working frame. Got just a little tenser and a little too short in the neck. That leg gild didn't look too bad. He's been doing pretty well carrying me in a sitting trot at his working trot lately. But today we're just not getting it all together, and I think it's definitely more my fault than his with the way I'm riding. And back to a sitting trot and pushing him forward across the diagonal. Kind of tensed up there. Would like him to stay a little more relaxed as he went forward. But right after that, his trot did get a little more relaxed. Going back to sitting trot, and I think he's finally going to go here and get that out of the way. And I'm moving my hands, trying to stay with them and keep the contact, but I'm not happy with how much they're bouncing around. Okay, there he finally went. Back to the sitting trot. And ideally, I would not want to see anything change when I go from posting to sitting. With how the way things were going today, probably should not have done as much sitting trot as I did. Normally, we do fine doing that, but as I'm not riding him optimally today, and he has a little extra attention because of that, it wasn't a good day to do this much sitting trot. And short leg yield to the fence line. And a little bit of shoulder 4. His trot has a lot of motion to it, and it makes it a little challenging to sit. When I first got started with him, I would just sit a few strides and go back to posting and just do that back and forth until I got better at sitting his trot and his back was stronger and could hold me at the sitting trot. So I should have went back to that today when we were having struggles. And there I tried a bit of a lengthening, but he got a little tense with that and didn't reach out as much as I'd like. The leg yield to the fence line. This trot's looking a little nicer there. It could be a little more forward for sure. Just not really getting him forward and through today. I think between my tension, me making him tense, it just wasn't a good combination. And back to posting, give his back a break, let him stretch out, and reoxygenate his muscles. And right there, he's reaching out a little bit better. Always like to see that nose poking out. And, you know, normally what I should have been doing today is just not sitting as much, going between posting and sitting more, since we were both tense. And did a little bit of a lengthening across the diagonal. Trying to get him a little more forward. Reaching out there. There's a better trot right there. Right before he went back into a stretch, that actually would have been a nice place to have his working frame. And he's looking a little bit more relaxed now. Watch, he's got a little bit of that head tilt to the outside there that I have to watch with him going to the right. And his head's just a little higher than it should be there for him to work optimally. Should have him in a slightly lower frame for his working trot. And it looks like it's getting a little bit better. You can see you got a bit of those floppy ears, which shows he's happy in his work. He's very expressive with his ears. And then we tried a bit of a lengthening and sitting trot. And I like that he did manage not to shorten his neck too much with that, like he was trying earlier. But again, still just a little more tension overall in him than I like to see. I'm going to take a walk break now. When I got Fuego, he had been sent to another trainer for, I believe around a month. And within that month, this trainer managed to undo all of the wonderful work that Will did with him. Well, he had him, from what I understand, when Karen went and saw a training session, this trainer pretty much fought with him the whole time and was doing kind of the spank and crank type of training. And when he came back after being with that trainer, he was back to square one with not being able to canter and being curled in the neck, not wanting to go forward. Very, very weak muscling along his top line and hindquarters. And I don't know if you remember from Will's videos with him where he talked about when he first got him and he was severely broken over in the neck and had trouble maintaining a canter lead and would swap leads and bunny hop. That's what he was back to doing after being with this other trainer for a month. When I first got him, he was very difficult for him to pick up his left lead at all, but both directions. When he first started out his canter, he would get upset and almost do like little crow hops, bunny hopping and constantly switching leads behind. And there's a little turn on the haunches. His head came up too high and he started to use the underside of his neck, but this is also something that it's a little newer for him to do with me, so it's not going to just do it over and over looking for perfection. I would like to see him stay a little more relaxed in the neck though when he does it, but he's making an attempt. Let's try to work on getting that neck down and out again. again in working trot. So anyway, when I first got him, he really had trouble cantering to the left, but now I think he actually prefers his left lead canter over his right one. And so I probably should have started cantering to the left instead of to the right today, but did a little leg yield there, just trying to get him a little more over his back and relaxed. Trying to get his neck out, reaching down into the contact. I saw he didn't have a great transition into the canter. He was a little grumpy about it. He usually will do a better canter transition than that, but we were just having problems today. And you can see I'm still working on getting him to relax here. He's just wanting to come up too high in his neck. Not really come through from behind like he needs to and get that relaxation. And there I finally got him to stretch a little. He is curled in the neck, but at least he's lowering his neck, so that's a start. And back on a circle, and again he's just a little too tense in his cantering today, not really relaxing down into the contact. Sometimes it helps with him to, he usually likes on the circle work if we spiral in a little and then leg yield back out, but today he just wasn't really happy with that, although that is an exercise that he usually enjoys doing. It helps him get more engaged, so we gave it a try there, but he wasn't going to help him today, so we moved on. And I'm going to try a circle of counter canter here. This is another thing that's new for him, going in a complete circle of counter canter rather than just doing a shallow serpentine down the long side of the arena. And this arena is somewhat short, so we don't have a lot of room to do shallow serpentines, but because we've been, usually the counter canter helps his regular canter to improve, and as you can see here, his canter does look a little nicer after doing that circle of counter canter, even though the counter canter itself was fairly unbalanced and not smooth, but I think it still was beneficial to him. And again, I just like to see him maybe not quite as high in the neck. I think he works better if his neck's a little longer and lower. And there, I let him lengthen his stride for a few strides. Again, just really trying to get him to reach underneath himself to help his canter out. And there we going back into a trot. Give him a break. And his trot's looking nicer after our canter work. It's a tough call with him because his trot works nicer after cantering, so you know, in some ways it would be better to do the cantering a little earlier in his training session, but his canter is better after he trots. You know, he's done quite a bit of trotting and is really warmed up, so you know, there's positives and negatives both to doing canter earlier or later in the session. And that's pretty nice right there. And overall, this whole session, I'm not pleased with the way he wants to curl a little bit in a lot of his stretch work, but I think overall he is working nicer now than earlier in the session. And again, that canter transition was a little tense, and his head came up. But that's just going along with my overall trouble today of keeping him working well over his back. Which again, I think was a lot to do with my riding and nervousness and tenseness with being recorded. So I am going to need to try to get opportunities to have somebody film me more often and do these voiceovers more often. And hopefully my riding will get more relaxed and natural, and that will definitely be a benefit to Fuego. Like I said, when I first got him, he really had trouble cantering to the left, but now I think he finds it easier to canter on his left lead than his right lead. His trot work has always been better going to the left when he's warming up. You noticed earlier, and I commented I like to warm him up going to the left first in his trot work. So I have a feeling naturally he probably always preferred his left lead, but probably due to maybe some injuries that caused him to have trouble with his left lead until those injuries healed. I think he had an injury to his sacroiliac area when he was working with that trainer for that month, and that's probably what was causing some of those canter issues and issues with not wanting to go forward and the curling. Also his the right, if you watched him move from behind, you'd see that the right side of his pelvis really dipped down when he walked, and that's improved quite a bit, but it's not 100% gone. He still does have imbalance in his hindquarters, which I think makes things difficult for him a little bit in his work. Just getting him to push over off my inside leg a little, really trying to get that inside hind leg active and coming up underneath himself to get that lift and swing through the back. And there's our circle of cantering this way, and we came up a little high in the neck and still unbalanced. I think overall better than our canter on his right lead, but you know, still needs to work on getting more comfortable with that. But again, I think his canter did improve after it this direction also, just like the other way. The last time I rode him, I was actually able to get him to stretch in our canter circle, and that was really nice, and that allowed him to find his balance a little bit better and get a little more relaxation throughout his body. And then his canter was really nice after that, so I'll keep working, I think, on doing stretching in the canter when I can. On this day, he just wasn't ready to stretch and canter yet. I was just finally able to get him to do it on our third ride after the filming of this video. And I'm just going to finish off our session with a little more sitting trot. And he didn't feel quite ready, so I went back to posting and let him stretch. Give him a little bit of a break here. But I think he is trotting nicer now at the end of the session than he was earlier. And now I move back to sitting trot, and it looks like a little bit of shoulder in. Shoulder in, and there we tried a few steps of half pass. I think he actually finds the half pass easier in the trot than at the walk. And just, not worrying too much about the perfect angle or perfect bend, just getting him used to the idea, staying relaxed about it. Not losing his forwardness. And we trying a little lengthening there. He kind of lost his rhythm as we started out and had to regain his balance. I like to send him forward a little after some of the harder lateral work, like the half pass. Sometimes they start to lose a little bit of their momentum with the lateral work, especially when it's something new they're trying. I gave him a short break there, and now I'm going back to sitting trot, and I'm going to try a little half pass on the right rein. And this is his stiffer side, but it's making a decent effort at it, even though I know it's difficult for him. A little bit more half pass, and I think he stayed just a little more relaxed with that one. And again, not much bend yet, but I know right now if I ask for more bend, and he would start getting a little tense and resist it more. So I'm just trying to keep him happy as he's learning about it. And that trot right there looks better. That's more what I'd like to see with a sitting working trot. And right there I feel his neck starting to get just a little tired, so we're going to go back to posting and stretching to finish off the session. I just felt right there like he was at the place where he needed to quit. And this is the first time we've ever done work in hand and lunging and riding all in one session, and with it being a hot day, I think he was a trooper and did pretty well with all that. So we did a normal length riding session, even though the lunging and work in hand was shorter than if I had just been doing those things on their own. So between all three things, we ended up doing just under an hour of work, which is quite a bit for a hot day. And he also had to put up with my nervous, over busy riding today, so he was a pretty good boy considering all that.